Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a lovely sunny morning here in suburban Chicago. It's July 28th. Looks like it's going to be a really warm one today, but right now it's not too much of a scorcher, so my morning walk will be pleasant and not too sweaty. Well, today I continue my ongoing saga into a discussion of game mechanisms. I can't even remember what I'm calling it right now. So it's something like my top games for the game mechanisms suggested by Kris Hickman in response to the previous set of episodes, part 4. So I've done 3 parts so far, and I have 9 more mechanisms to talk about. It's been a really lively discussion over on Board Game Geek. If you haven't had a chance to pop over there, I recommend it. Lots of people weighing in, giving interesting feedback about their ideas about these different mechanisms. So, and frankly, better choices than mine in a lot of cases. I'm sad I didn't think of some of them, and I agree with some of the choices. So, but you'll have to go over there to see what other people are suggesting. I'm not going to back up and redo my thinking about these. I think my goal for this series is just to do the games I thought of when I thought of them. And if I couldn't think of the one that ended up being the better one, well, all right. Oh my, look at all the dogs. Our mechanisms to talk about are hand management, you split, I choose, tactical movement. Let's just go right down the line. Hand management. So this one is a pretty broad category, but I'm thinking that I probably want to focus on a game where it is a central mechanism for the game, if not the biggest mechanism for the game. So in this case, hand management would be a game where you're thinking about the cards that you have in your hand and you're manipulating them in a way that you can play them in the right order, that sort of thing. So, I would say a deck building game is significantly related to hand management, although it depends on the game in terms of how much hand management is part of what you're doing. Well, I'm inclined to put the Martin Wallace area control deck building hand management games, that series of games that started with A Few Acres of Snow, A Study in Emerald, Mythotopia, and A Handful of Stars, in this category, because an essential part of what you're doing in that game is arranging for yourself to have the cards that you need to do the big play that you want. And unlike a lot of deck builders, Wallace has you keep the cards that you don't use. So you are able to manipulate your hand so that you have the right combination of things to really pull off a big play. So those games are definitely all in the running. As you all know, A Study in Emerald is my favorite of them, although A Handful of Stars is pretty great too, as is A Few Acres of Snow. Frankly, I like them all very much. So those games are all definitely in the running. Another one would be, I guess, Res Arcana a little bit, because your play with your hand is so particular. Thinking about when to use your cards and when to hold on to them, because you don't get very many cards each round. So you have to be much more particular about it. Android Netrunner, of course, is a regular card game, but a big part of it is making sure that you keep enough cards in your hand to be able to do what you need to do when you need to do it, but also be able to take damage as the runner if you don't make sure to keep enough cards in hand. As for games that are purely or mostly hand management, you could almost get to something like, you could almost make an argument that something like Lost Cities is a hand management game. If you haven't played Lost Cities, it's a 2-player game where you're lining up a series of cards in order. It feels a little bit like Djinn in that you can take a discarded card from one of several discarded piles, or you always play a card and you always take a card. So you could take cards that your opponent is discarding and then use them. So a big part of the game is keeping the cards that you know your opponent needs. Oh, and that way, you know what? Arboretum might have to be it. I thought Arboretum was really clever and incredibly mean. I mean, it's not my favorite game, but the hand management in it is just really tight. In that same way, the Jin, I'm going to call that Jin style hand management. But do I like that better than the Martin Wallace games, which I've already said I think are area control games? And then there's something like Catan. I guess that's not too much hand management. This is a very broad subject, tricky for me to claim. You know, I think A Few Acres of Snow might be the hand management game that I find. Or Res Arcana. Oh, this is tricky, folks. And if I go too long, I'm going to run out of time for the rest of the game, and you're going to stand here listening to me waffle. Oh, but then there's Strife. This is a game where each player starts with 9 cards in hand, and you play 1 card per turn, and the card that you play interacts with the card you played previously, and interacts with the location, and interacts with the cards your opponent played and played previously. So that one, there's a lot of issues related to the careful coordination of your cards. Careful thinking about when you play your cards and what you do with them. That said, I think the play is more about the order of play rather than managing your hand. Oh, I got it. The epitome of a hand management game for me is the game that makes it very hard to manage your hand, in which the whole game is about managing your hand. It's about thinking about what order your cards are in and how to manipulate that order and how to get rid of the cards you don't want and get cards you want from other people so that you can play them in the right order. And that's Bonanza. Uwe Rosenberg's card game about planting beans. That is my favorite hand management game. Bonanza. You Split, I Choose is the next mechanism offered. This is the classic method for dividing up cake that I try to teach my children, and they don't like it. My son prefers I Split, I Choose as his method of cutting up cake. But I've always thought this was an interesting game mechanism. I played New York Slice, and I thought that was fine, but not great. I like Castles of Mad King Ludwig, which I wouldn't have thought of as a You Split, I Choose game, but Rado called it that. And he did it because you get to decide, you get to assign each of the tiles to one of the price categories. So it has as that central question, I'm making this thing worth a certain amount. How much are you willing to pay for it? But I feel like that is a bit broad. And if you do that, then there's all sorts of games where, like, I offer up a thing at a price and you all either, you can buy it at that price, or else if it comes back around to me, I have to buy it at that price. That is a kind of standard trope that I don't feel like is quite the same as You Split, I Choose. Although I guess it is, or as I Split, You Choose. It is in such a way that I'm choosing you either pay this price and get this thing, or pass and then I have to. So it's a little bit of that. But I do like the games that are more pure that. And actually, the first game I played that ever used this mechanism very well is the game I want to point to as my favorite, because I do really like this game. I think it's a neat puzzle to play. We haven't played it much in my family of late, but I would like it if we did. It's pretty good. And that is the game Mammut. I got Mammut for free as an extra, we'll toss this in, stretch goal for the Escape Big Box or the Alhambra Big Box. I don't recall which. Back when I backed Queen Big Box games on Kickstarter. So the game, if you haven't played it, you are a tribe of prehistoric folks, and you're dividing up the spoils of the hunt. So the spoils of the hunt are a certain number of tiles that have various icons on them that lead to different kinds of scoring possibilities. One player divides up the lot of the hunt, and then the next player chooses one piece of that lot. And that seems like a pretty straightforward thing, but here's the part I really like. Anybody can say, instead of taking the lot from the hunt, what they want instead is someone else's lot from the hunt. So let's say we're playing a 4-player game. I divide the group into 4 pieces, and then Dave says he wants packet A. And then Steve says he wants packet A as well. Here's the trick. Steve then has to discard one token out of it. I can't remember what he does with that other token. But there's a thing where if I want to take the packet you took, I take it and I get rid of one tile from it, thus making the packet that I took from you a little less good than it was when you took it. I don't remember where that packet goes, though. And then we keep going around until everyone has taken a packet. And then you score, and you do that like 4 more times. And at the end, the winner is the person who earned the most points. But you get points from all these different variety of things. And the different elements that come out of the hunt, there's such a huge variety of elements involved in what's coming out of the hunt that it's great. I really like it. That's Mammut. For you split, I choose. All right, Kris had on his list tactical movement, which a couple of people sort of asked for a little more clarification there. I am going to go with my instinctive discussion of that, which is a game where your movement is focused more on what's happening this turn in response to specific actions on the board rather than a long-term strategy. So a game like Nexus Ops would be one where you have all these little pieces and the board state changes dramatically between each turn. So really it's sort of just about optimizing your actions for the next turn. Maybe you can see 2 turns ahead. I would sort of put an anti-narking in this boat, even though in the long term you have a big strategy with anti-narking. In the short term, you have cards that let you do specific things. So you almost never can plan too broadly because you only have the actions available to you in the cards. So to plan with any great depth is pretty difficult. And that is true for some of the other Martin Wallace deck builder games as well. I mean, skirmish-based war games often use tactical movement. Back when I used to play Warhammer 40K, sometimes I would have a big strategy, but usually it's, 2 sets of 30 pieces on the board, and you're responding to the individual experience, the individual situation around each piece, rather than a sort of broader sense of where things could succeed or fail. And then there's games like Onitama, which is certainly strategic in that you're trying to lure your opponent into particular things, but often you have to make moves based on a limited set of cards that you can choose and heavily determined by the cards your opponent gives you to use. So Onitama is a good one there. I'm sort of inclined to say Tashkalar. I feel like Tashkalar is one of the most tactical games I've ever played. As a 2-player game, which is 99% of the way I've played it, you really only have a couple things you can do, basically interacting with your opponent by playing cards and trying to engage specifically with the choices that they've made. So I'd be inclined to say Tashkalar, but there's not really any movement. There is a little movement in Tashkalar. I'm going to say Tashkalar. If you haven't played Tashkalar, it is a basically abstract game from designer Vlada Chvátil, in which you are playing tokens on the board, and you get very limited tokens, 1 or 2 per turn, 2 per turn. And then you can play these cards when you make a design on the board. So you're playing these tokens that have like basic or strong characteristics, and then there's these other epic tokens that come in. Basically, you're trying to match these patterns on the board that allow you to bring in these tokens, which then move a little bit and disrupt your opponent's pattern. I'm going to call it tactical movement because a big part of the game is playing the right pattern, which then lets you move a piece. And it's all about momentary gains to get goals. So the game has a variety of goals that are available. If after one of your turns you have successfully matched one of the goals, then you achieve it, and you win the game once you have 5 goals. You also can win by killing a certain number of your opponent's pieces. There's a couple other things, I think. It's been a while, but it's a really interesting game because it's so narrow focused. It is something you definitely aim for strategy, but often your opponent's moves are so disruptive to your board state that it's pretty hard to do anything other than tactical play. Now, a stickler for the phrase movement might complain that mostly this is a game of of playing these small pieces and then playing cards that affect the board state. So the movement is somewhat minimal, but really important. Often a card will let you move one of your tokens 1 or 2 spaces. And if you manage to do that in a way that triggers another card, then you can maybe get 2 cards triggered on your turn. It can be a big play. I guess Tashkalar I'm going to call my favorite tactical movement game. Well, boy howdy, I only got through 3, and I'm just about at the end of my walk. So I guess that what I'm going to do is just, when I do one of these walks, I'm going to talk about mechanisms till I run out of time, and we're just going to keep doing that until I run out of mechanisms from the forum. So if there's a board game mechanism that I haven't talked about yet that you would like to hear me talk about, I have apparently a number of continuing episodes coming up in this series as I talk about my favorite game that I can think of off the top of my head while I'm out for a walk about a particular set of mechanisms mentioned by a particular set of pals over on Board Game Geek. You can join us there. Board Game Geek Guild number 3269 is the place that we're having this discussion. And yeah, reach out to me there. My username is Wombat929. That's also my username on Board Game Arena or Boitaju or Yukata. If you would like to play Tashkalar, it is available to play on Board Game Arena. I'd be happy to enjoy a game with you. I'm not sure I can teach it, though. You'd probably have to go watch a rules segment for that. But we would have fun. Thanks for joining me today. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.